Hello and welcome to the Health, Occupations and Long-Term Care Subcommittee. We have three quick bills on the agenda today. We still have a voting session in front of us in HGO, so we would like to keep this quick. Most of these bills we've discussed before. The first bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 298, State Board of Pharmacy Closure Notice to Customers, which Lisa can remind us, but I'll just update the committee. We have two amendments in the packet that we discussed last week, one from Delegate Bagnall and one from Delegate Krebs. They do basically the same thing, although I would suggest that Delegate Bagnall's amendment is a little bit more efficient at doing it. So Lisa, why don't you give us an update?
Sure. So the bill specifies the customer notification procedures the owner of a pharmacy must follow prior to closing a pharmacy for more than 7 consecutive days. Delegate Bagnall's amendment, and you have an amendment on page 3 with a reprint right after it, requires the closing pharmacy to provide at least 30 days notice if practicable, but not less than 14 days notice by posting a sign or posting on the pharmacy's website and providing written and verbal notice to customers who are picking up prescriptions. And Delegate Bagnall's amendment also strikes the option to mail notice to prescription holders, so it just has the one notice requirement. Delegate Krebs' amendment is on page 5, and it requires the closing pharmacy to provide at least 14 days notice of the closing, or requires the closing pharmacy or pharmacy to which the prescriptions are being transferred to provide notice of the closing to each customer that has a current prescription.
So, sorry, I have a bit of an echo now. Are we okay, Delegate Krebs, are we okay with going with the approach Delegate Bagnall suggested, since it just strikes the mailing altogether?
No, I'm fine with that, but the one thing I still have concern about is the at least 30 days if practicable. Why not just say, but no less than 14 days? It sort of says at least, or who's going to decide what's practicable?
Well, I think, tell me if I'm correct, Lisa, that the pharmacy owner would be able to determine that, right? That's what that language means.
Well, here's the issue that I had from the pharmacist about the 30 days. And this is what they say. When you give so much notice, sometimes people will take their prescriptions and leave and go somewhere else. And sometimes their business value, if they're selling it, is calculated at a certain point in time right before they sell. So they don't want to do it too far ahead because people might lose business in between. So that's why they wanted the 14 days. If we take out it's going to be practical to post a sign. It's no big deal, but they're worried that people will take their prescriptions and leave. It could affect the price of that they're selling their clientele base or whatever.
All right, it seems like Jim Doyle has his hand up, so let's hear from him because he wasn't here
I didn't know
last
he was
week.
here. Thank you.
No, it's
Thank
okay.
you,
I didn't know either. I just saw it.
Yeah,
Jim, go ahead.
I do. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm on mute. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Delegate Krebs is making the point that we would make as representing the independent pharmacies. When they sell, and of course, the closures are generally a sale from, in many instances, from an independent to a chain pharmacy. When they sell, the value of what they can get on their sale is really entirely on the prescription customer base that they can transfer. And to the extent that there's notice further and further out, all that one substantial thing that does is have people leave and transfer to other pharmacies, which they have the right to do. But in terms then of an adjustment to a price down the road closer to settlement or at the time of settlement, that certainly will and can substantially affect the sales price. So if you've lost a lot of your business, your prescription business, during that 30-day period, then there may be a substantial adjustment to the price that you're going to get at the time of settlement. So we're in favor of the notification, and we're fine with striking the one option there. But we think the 30 days is really too much. And the 14 days we think is more reasonable. And also, I would say, looking around the country, Virginia does have a 30-day rule. But generally, the other states that I've looked at, for the most part, have 14 or 15-day notification rules. And I think that's a reasonable accommodation between the interests of the customer and the interest of the pharmacy that's trying to sell a business.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Delegate Cullison?
I'm wondering, Madam Chair, thank you, if we could strike in Delegate Bagnell's amendment, strike the at least 30 days and say at least 14 days before anticipated closing of the pharmacy. Leave the rest of her amendment okay. Can I move that?
I would second that. I think that's great. Now, Delegate Bagnell, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm totally in support.
Wonderful. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion from members of the committee? Go ahead
So
and
we're
raise your
saying at
hand.
least 14 days. That's the change.
Yes. that's the
Exactly.
change.
So it would be at least 14 days, which addresses the concerns Mr. Doyle just raised,
Right.
and puts us in line with, it sounds like, most other states that have a notice requirement. So moved and seconded. I see no hands up for further discussion. All in favor say aye, and anyone in
Aye.
We're voting on the amendment. We're voting on the
We're voting-
amendment.
Right.
We're voting on the amendment.
It's actually an amended, but amended amendment, but
Yes.
we can do that, yes.
So that would just say that the notice provision would be at least 14 days.
Right.
Anyone who's opposed, raise your hand in the side. I don't see any hands up. On the bill as amended, do I have a motion?
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this bill? Go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see any. All in favor of the bill, say aye. Anyone who's opposed, raise your hand. I don't see any hands up besides Delegate Cullison's, which I think is just lingering.
Sorry.
So passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions on this one. Let's do the Senate Bill 744, the State Board of Nursing Bill, the Certified Nursing Assistants Advisory Committee. Tyler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Senate Bill 744 alters the membership and meeting requirements for the State Board of Nursing's Certified Nursing Assistant Advisory Committee. So it provides for the appointment of alternates and additional requirements for the advisory committee members, and then just revises things like the terms of the members, requiring the board to fill a vacancy within 60 days, providing for a quorum, and so on.
Great. And everybody was on board on this bill, and we have no amendments. Do we have any questions from members of the committee on the bill? I will see if I
Move the
see any
bill.
hands. Moved,
Second.
seconded. All right. Any further discussion? Raise your hands. Not. All in favor, say aye. Anyone who's
Aye.
opposed, go ahead and raise your hand on the side. Passes unanimously. Great. The final bill for us to discuss today is also a Tyler bill. It is the State Board of Dental Examiners Disciplinary Process and Actions bill that came in as a task force to us from the Senate. And we have an amendment that I put together at the direction of all sorts of people figuring out what we could actually pass out of the House. So we wanted to keep the spirit of the task force together without making it a task force. So we were instructed to make it a reporting bill. We discussed this a lot the last couple of weeks. Tyler can go through what the amendment does, but just so the committee fully understands the spirit of the amendment, we want to have a report to us by November 1st from the dental board. And we want that report to be really broad and looking big picture at the issues that were raised both with the Vital bill and the Krebs bill that we discussed previously. And we also want to just be using that as an opportunity to have the dental board look at their processes and report back to us in November. We can get a briefing to really see where we're at, see what we have learned, and if necessary, we can request one of those performance evaluations from DLS. But right now, we just want to give the dental board the opportunity to do this report over a 6-month period and you'll see as Tyler discusses it, the language is really broad. How does their process compare to other boards in the state? How does their process compare to the dental boards across the country? Go ahead, Tyler, walk us through it, please.
Sure. So building on the amendment that the Senate had adopted, the first portions of it are the same. I recommend following it, the reprint, if you have that available. The amendment, the reprint will have most of the information there cleanly. So it'll study how complaints are made, how complaints are filed to the dental board, length of time that complaints are usually open, and then some of the information that we're adding to just get into more detail of the disciplinary process. average timeline between steps in the disciplinary process. It lists some of the steps or events that occur through the process. And then not included here, adding just a further detail that the board will examine instances of when there's a large deviation from the average. So if, say, there's there's an issuance and then there's a very long time until they finally get to like a resolution conference or the show cause hearing, the board would explain, it was longer than usual by this amount of time. This is the reasons that we found, or it was quicker than usual. It was easier to get from step A to step B for these reasons. And then how the board will also look at how the disciplinary actions are publicly reported. The topic of requiring dentists to carry malpractice insurance, and then adding and then the last bits are what Delegate Kelly mentioned, which are looking at comparable boards, so other health HOCs boards in the state, other dental boards throughout the country, and then just generally best practices that are recommended by experts in the field before coming together to make recommendations and submit the report to the General Assembly for review.
Thank you, Tyler. And just for the benefit of the committee, everything he read in there is in the draft before you, but he is going to, we have what we would call amendment in concept language around the part he described for you that was sort of describing the outliers in the timeline. So Tyler's working on getting that language exactly. So that would be when we have the full voting session, we should have that ready. But we don't have that before you guys, but I think you understand the concept. Delegate Krebs.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I sent a list of questions, about 17 questions to you guys about a week or so ago. And it was some very specific questions. And I think we're heading in the right direction with some of this language, but we want to make sure that we're not just using averages. We want to make sure that we're looking at the specific outliers that are the problems that we've been talking about. And we want to, so I'm not sure how you can, if we can make it as an addendum to the board, that this is our expectation. List of like 17 questions, 17 things we'd like to look at.
I think Delegate Krebs, the challenge is we don't want to get too prescriptive because it's not our job to weigh in into individual cases. That's why we wanted to use very general language, but we will add to this amendment the language Tyler just described that says, we need to know information about the outliers and why the timeline was not average for that November 1st report.
But a lot of these things are different points in time when these are the outliers, and they would not be specific cases. But I think
we can certainly forward that to the board because that will be helpful for them in generating the report.
Yes.
Absolutely, we can make sure that information is shared with them.
That's what I'd like. That would be helpful. Very helpful.
Absolutely, Delegate Cullison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the reason I like this, and I understand that there's a lot of information that we want, but we're sort of at that point in session where we really need to move, but this sets the groundwork for us to know in November what the situation is. And in next January, I think we're going to have a very clear idea about, any policy changes that we might need to make in order to address the issues. So with that, Madam Chair, can I move these amendments?
Absolutely. Do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any further discussion on the amendments? I don't see any more hands up. So I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Anyone who's opposed, go ahead and raise your hand in the side. Okay, and on the bill as amended, the other thing I just want to note, while it's not a work group anymore, so we don't have legislative members, I would ask the dental board in the process of pulling together this report to obviously communicate with the stakeholders and particularly stay in touch with both Senator Beidel and Delegate Krebs on this, because it's going to be a lot of, I know it's of keen interest to especially them, but all of the members over the interim. So we would appreciate that. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Anyone who's opposed, raise your hand in the side. Looks like it passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. That was a lot of work, and we appreciate all the stakeholders coming together on that. That's the last bill on our agenda. We are probably going to meet again on Thursday for a couple of stragglers. So this is not the last meeting, but thank you all for your participation. And I think we have a voting session coming up soon. So expect a text from Melissa about a specific time.